Welcome back to the Grateful Podcast. Today's guest is Katie Turner, a licensed psychologist and intuitive guide who blends clinical science with deep spiritual wisdom to help people awaken to their true selves. Her work lives at the intersection of modern psychology and ancient inner knowing, offering a powerful path toward healing, purpose, and transformation. Katie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I'm fascinated with this intersection between modern science and ancient philosophy, spirituality, and you really embody that intersection. I think it's so cool the work that you're doing around that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to dive in and talk about it.
Yeah, so you talk a lot about intuition. What is intuition?
Yeah, there's a few ways it kind of comes through for people. I think I do a lot of work around spiritual awakening and intuition, and I think our intuition is our kind of communication that we receive directly from spiritual source. And for people who are kind of new to it, spirituality doesn't mean religion necessarily. It is an individual relationship with source greater than yourself. For some people, that may be in a religious context, and others, it's really not. It might be nature, higher self, like your gut knowing. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It's just more of something that's beyond just the logical mind alone that can really help guide us on decisions, on our own kind of soul path, and give us like helpful information or guidance around like what decisions are right for us day to day. But in our culture and society, like Western culture and society is very logical mind dominant, very rational mind dominant. We've been trained that way since we're little children. So it's usually something that all people have access to, but we've lost contact with from a young age. So many adults have to actually actively try to get it back if we want it back.
How do we do that? How do we train intuition?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of my journey, and I think many people will resonate this, is many times we realize it's real when we ignore it or when we rationally override it. Most people have had some experiences of like, I just really didn't like that person. Everyone else did. And I just had a gut feeling. And then later you're like, I told you, like I knew.
Yeah.
And so that was initially kind of, I thought all the spiritual was like woo woo, placebo effect, like never really know who, if it helps people, great, but probably can't really prove it in our lifetimes. I stumbled into my own spiritual awakening and it really changed the sense of like how I experience reality, what I know is real. I deep dived more into like quantum physics research and trying to find like where's the science behind this to explain it. And there actually is a lot out there already. And so I think often when we realize that if there's something there we can't explain, but we get some evidence in real life of like this was onto something and this was helpful information to have. And then from there, if we want to develop it, knowing what our dominant intuitive like sensory gateway is really helpful because we all tend to have one or two dominant sensory abilities that we're more likely to get intuitive information from. It's definitely a process, kind of like any skill. There's some people are born with it naturally. I'd hear stories of people who are like talking to deceased people like from a young age or guys and like psychics who's always had it from a young age. And I thought it was just, okay, if it's real, you have it or you don't. I've now come to realize I think we all have levels of it, just like athletic ability, like ability to pick up music. Some people are more gifted at it easier early on than others, and others, if we kind of put practice and time into it, we can get better. And I'm the
Uh,
second. Like
yeah.
I should work to develop it.
So what type of practices do you do? Because I know that intuition, I did some reading on your website and it doesn't look the same for everybody. So I'm
No.
guessing you had to do some unique things and discover what works for you to build that. What did that look like?
Yeah, I think I for anyone wanting to explore it, I would also orient people to when we start off, we're often wanting to be like, what's my gift or ability? Like it's a
Hmm.
present that we can open it up and then use it. And it really is a process that evolves. So it's still evolving for me. It's evolved over 2 decades. Like it continues to evolve. It's never just been the same the whole time. And so I think it's important to approach it with that mindset. And the other side of it is for me, I was dominant more empathic ability. I created a free quiz on my website for people to get a sense of like what their dominant sense may be. So it tends to be either just kind of like knowing without really knowing why you know. That one's really difficult to explain. You'll just be like, I have a bad feeling, or I just know this isn't going to work. Like, just trust me. And usually people don't, unless you have enough of a track record where they're like, I don't really get why they know this, but like when they've really been firm about this before, something's happened. So maybe we'll take this into consideration. And others, for me, I was more empathic initially, which is like feeling emotions or physical sensations in my own body. And I didn't even realize I was doing that until my early 20s. And that was when I was exploring more an intuition development workshop and doing different exercise paired with people I don't know. And like the amount that everything inside of me changed based on like who I was working with, it was a light bulb
Can you give me an
moment of like, how
example?
long has this been going on? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any examples of what that would look like? Feeling things like that?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people are very sensitive to the energy of places. They can be really thrown off in collective. People who are empathic, it almost, I like to think of it as like concentric circle boundaries, where some people kind of pick up everything and other people are good at separating other things. But maybe if a family member or loved one or their partner's really struggling, they have a really hard time being okay too. It's often
Interesting.
like physical empaths, you might suddenly get like a really bad headache out of nowhere or a pain. And then someone close to you is like, oh, I have such a bad headache. And then yours goes away. And it was just like you're picking up or feeling it in your body of someone else's. That was experiences I would have of being able to describe like where pain was radiating and someone else had an injury and like that was exactly where it was. And then when I'm not working with them, it's like that's gone in my body. So it's like it's not pain I'm holding all the time. Emotional empaths, it's you're picking up emotional feelings. So if someone's really sad or anxious, it's like you might pick up that feeling too and be feeling it. And we're often some people often don't realize they are initially, but we might be a lot more invested in trying to help other people get help and feel better so that we can feel better. Empaths often struggle with kind of boundary setting and codependency, but it's not traditional codependency because it's kind of like if your energy's not okay, I can't feel okay, so like fix this so I can feel okay.
I did the quiz right before we hopped on the call, and I was told I'm a clairsentient empath. Uh,
Okay,
that
yeah, so
that sounds so. I didn't have time to actually dig into it, but I love the sound of it. It makes me sound like some I don't know, Master Yoda, something like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, the clairs
uh,
are how it's often referred to of like the auditory, so like auditory messages. And that's
yeah,
not always like hearing voices in your head. For some people it is, but sometimes it's just a snippet of conversation, something on the radio that like jumps out at you. You might get
interesting.
goosebumps or time seems to slow down. You're like, that felt significant. Like it's answering something I've been trying to ask. Visual as well. It can be something jumping out at the visual field. It's not necessarily seeing things that other people aren't seeing, or it might be in your mind's eye. Yeah, the empathic one is. Yeah, I'm like congratulations, and I'm also sorry because that one sucks. I've had it like that was mine as well. And it's a
Yeah,
harder one to work with because Western psychology uh, overall doesn't really recognize empathic ability as a real thing. It's like there is mirror neuron science around it, but it's like you can imagine what it feels like, but you don't actually feel it. Whereas I really believe, no, like people who are empathically wired, we're not living someone else's experience. We don't know better than them what their life is like, but we are really impacted by other people's energy and we can be taking it on. And
yeah.
so sometimes it's not just about, oh, if you're sad, like go process that sadness. Here's tools to journal about it. Here's ways to speak up. It's like first we got to learn to recognize, is this even mine? And if it's not mine, how do I start letting it go?
Does that empathic ability also allow us to transfer energy in the opposite direction? Instead of picking up how other people are feeling, can we transfer how we're feeling to other people?
Not necessarily, like, because if they don't have that ability, they won't pick it up in the same way.
Interesting.
Um, they
It's a
wouldn't have the
one-way
reception.
street.
We can communicate it. I mean, I think empathy in action is one thing of like that's active communication, active listening. Other adults don't necessarily need or want us to feel their emotions, like, and there's an element of if they want help or something, they should be able to communicate that, not just energetically broadcast it.
That should be able to is the key word there.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so I'm really interested in this idea. Are you familiar with the work of Danny Kahneman?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so him and Amos Tversky, I'm gonna mess up his name, but they are very influential psychologists that um, disproved the common idea that humans are rational beings.
Hmm.
And so I'm reading this book right now by Michael Lewis called The Undoing Project. Very interesting. And it talks about how we actually should not trust a lot of our logical ability. Oftentimes we'll create odds where there are create patterns where where there are no patterns. And we don't have any innate statistical ability as humans. But my question is, where can we draw the line between intuition and trusting our intuitive feelings and trying to calculate statistical odds of something? I feel like that line could probably become pretty fuzzy.
Yeah, I definitely I'll check out their work more too, but I would agree in terms of most of the training I do and the work I do in my practice and the theories and approaches I found most transformational for people is they're not conscious mind logical approaches. Part of my disillusionment with the overall like entry level of mental health field in the Western world is a lot of it is very conscious mind focus of like
Yeah,
what's your thought? Okay, what if you think something different? Maybe you'll feel differently, and then make a plan. Which those are important pieces, but it doesn't take into account our nervous system wiring, and our brain stores negative emotional memory quicker like in a different way than positive emotional memory. We're really wired to like survive and keep ourselves safe. So if we make mistakes of like there I think there's a threat here and there's not, that's better for us on an evolutionary scale than not registering potential danger. So
yeah,
I really work in a theory of about 5 to 10% of what's running the show is actually our conscious mind. Everything else is, we often think it's conscious, but it's not. It's earlier experiences, it's old emotional memory. It can be before we even have verbal memory. There's even research that shows like our ancestors and epigenetic trauma can get passed down. So on the intuitive level, it's part of my intuitive awakening is I'm often like I pick up on that stuff or I'm aware of it intuitively. The piece around like the difference with intuition and logic, I would say too, is it's I wouldn't recommend that anybody make a major life decision when they're just starting out with intuition. Like I make major life decisions with it now, but I've built a lot of trust in it over time. If I would have got intuitive information and it was never backed up or it was always wrong, I'd be like, this is useless. Like it does
yeah,
not help. But I have enough in it now, and I've gotten very specific things like this thing is happening, this is the timeline it's going to happen, this is going on, and then had that confirmed and had no way of actually having any rational knowledge about it. Same with, I mean, when I first started out I wasn't working with clients around it. I have enough training now that I do, but I've had enough experience of working with people where I have no rational information to go off of at all, and the specificity, like how specific it is, how detailed it is, and to have that be able to be confirmed back from people, it's like, okay, there's something here. This can't just be nothing. There's no way I'd be able to make this stuff up. So I have like again, and I think it's a red flag in intuitive territory if someone's like 100% this is always going to be the way it is. Because
yeah.
if we get into quantum, it's like there's multiple realities, things can change. I don't think there's like one set, it's always going to be 100% accurate. But it's just, and some of the ways it's kind of guided me is even just like really bad, like reviewing investment stuff. And I don't understand that very well. I have someone I do like a once a year kind of thing. Like I'm not doing day trading. I don't understand how that works. But and I usually would just trust the person, but I had such a bad feeling about it. I was like, hey, no, like it needs to get moved here. And my financial advisor was really trying to me out of it. She's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, this is where you're at. This is here. This isn't the right account for you. And I was just like, no, like this feels horrible to keep it here or to move it higher risk, just move it. And like a few months after that, like the world markets crashed. And if I would have
Mm.
kept it where it was, I would have lost probably half to a third of what was in there. But I didn't lose it because I followed the intuition. Um, and even
Fascinating.
like following for my practice, I'll get very specific information about like people I'm going to meet, and then I'll meet them and recognize who they are. I'll get very specific information I've had about family members. And so, but intuition operates differently than logic. It'll often give us the next, it's like a GPS system, but if it, instead of showing you the whole route in advance, it would just be like in 400 meters, turn left, or like turn left now. And you're going to you have an idea of where you might get to, but we're not telling you like exactly what it's going to look like the whole
You're good at
way.
that GPS voice.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, you hear stories of things like that often, and I think it's fascinating where people will have a premonition about something and it'll come true. I know that a few years ago, I was in the car with my family and my stepdad didn't go through a green light. He just stopped. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden this car ran the red light. And we're like, what? How does that happen? I think people will often will find they become disillusioned with the whole idea of intuition because it
Yeah.
seems so far-fetched.
Yeah.
So where does the science back this up? You've talked about quantum physics. Is I mean, we see proof every day that this intuition is real and that we can uh, predict things in ways we don't understand. But how? What's the science behind it?
Yeah, there's a book called The Awakened Brain that's really great about breaking down the neurological science of it's I can't remember now if she's a psychiatrist or a neuroscience researcher, but she stumbled on the research around spirituality in brain. It wasn't what she was looking for. She was looking for more like
Yeah.
what are the mental health protective factors. And then throughout her research and then before kind of writing the book, she went through her own spiritual awakening as well. But again, it was like initial science skeptic, not looking for it. And but she talks about the neurological research as seeing like it seems like we have receptors of like we can go through these struggles, dark night of the soul experiences, but if we can connect to something greater than ourselves, again, on a spiritual, doesn't have to be necessarily religious experience, like we seem to actually have the neurological wiring to be designed to receive communication from this larger field.
Interesting.
In religious perspective, it's like the prayer is like the putting it out there, whereas the spiritual and the meditation, the intuitive is like the answer coming back to you. And oftentimes with a lot of the times with intuitive, when it's truly intuitive, it's not our ego necessarily. It's often not what we want to hear. There's often a knowing or an emotional resonance with it. So again, it's that personalized GPS. It's not about a statistic of like this is right, this is wrong. It doesn't cater to our logical mind. So oftentimes we can go to intuition wanting it to operate like logic. We'll be like, okay, what's the chances? Like, should I stay in this job or go or why or what's going to happen here? Whereas the intuition might just give us like, this feels right to do right now. Like maybe just start networking. Maybe just go to therapy, maybe work on this one piece. It gives us one little piece at a time of like, this is the right thing, but it's not going to come like save us from our life. It's like a wise guide that walks the path with us, and we have to be doing our own work and continually engaging with that as well and evolving. So if people want to outsource it as like a chat GPT of like give me the answer of what I should do, it's going to be disappointing because it doesn't really work that way.
So what I hear you saying is intuition's not necessarily going to give us like a clear picture of the future, but it'll guide us to our next step. Is that right?
Yeah, it can guide us to our next step. Sometimes it can give a sense of a future. Like people might have a flash of like a certain work they're doing or like having a family or like being in a certain place, but it won't give us like the full way of this is exactly how this is going to happen. Sometimes it plays out. I mean, I've been doing this work long enough now that like sometimes it plays out over 10 years or longer. And our
Yeah.
rational mind is like, no, but I want it in a year. Like I made the plan. I'm working with the coach. It's like, maybe you can influence that timeline a bit, but not always.
So it's interesting because when you put it like that, our culture is really wired to reject intuitive decisions. If you're going to make a big decision that alters your life or take a step or quit your job or whatever because your intuition told you so, your parents, your friends, your family, they're going to say, well, why'd you do that? And you're going to say, because I felt like it. They're like, and most people will say that's not a good enough answer. Um, do you think this societal need for reasoning behind our decisions has dampened intuition?
I think there's kind of a few things that come up for me, and that's a really good example. In my book, I talk about like planifesting versus manifesting. Like I'm very rational and grounded. I'm not like I think sometimes the spiritual part can get a little bit too woo woo, where people get the intuitive hit of like, I want to start my own business or I'm going to leave my job, and then they just full on quit with no planning and no funds, nothing to do this. And that can be really problematic too. Again, intuition is like one little step at a time. And it may just be, there might be this sense of calling of like, I want more. And the first step for that is actually like the logical step. Logic meeting intuition is like, let's start exploring what that might look like. And I don't think there's one potential path. I do think we have some free will in this to say, like, you could just quit your job. You could jump without a parachute.
Yeah.
You could do it. That might work. That can work for some people. But when we know like our personality, what risk level we're willing to tolerate, and again, I would never recommend somebody take a higher risk level than they're comfortable with like new intuitive information. It's like
Yeah.
you need to earn trust with anything, with any person, with any ability. Like you need to know it takes a while to learn. Intuitive information is also like our rational mind can get a hold of it and take it off somewhere else where like now it's not intuitive anymore and now it's like what we want to hear and we don't have enough of the details yet. So it does take time to learn to trust it and get stronger with it, and our logic should support it enough as well. So it may be more of like, okay, maybe I put some part-time time in towards like researching what I might want to do, making a business plan. Maybe I start saving up and like start a side hustle so I can actually plan
Right.
to leave eventually, like when the numbers are hitting a certain point that I'm comfortable with. It's not an all or none, like it's one or the other.
So you find some equilibrium between your logical brain and your spiritual brain. Well, actually, that's a good question. So when I say logical brain versus my spiritual brain, is that correct terminology? Do we have different parts of the brain that operate, or is it just logical mind or intuition, or how do you put that? Are there biological mechanisms for this?
Yeah, I don't like, again, I'm not as much of an expert on the neuroscience part. I've read about it. I
Yeah.
can't pull it all up initially. There's often talk about like right brain, left brain. I don't know.
Right.
There's also there's also challenges to that as well too. But I do think there's aspects where like our logical mind is good at like the planning, the execution. On the spiritual side, it's almost like that ego part where I'm not a believer in like get rid of the ego. Like we need this ego to operate in our day to day like time
Yeah.
space reality to see like what are the things I need to get done, like make the to-do list, do those. But when that can support like this intuitive knowing or calling, it's like then it can help us like take time to do that, execute it, like again explore that passion to be like what might that look like. Is it another course, is it training, is this a hobby, does it have to be a job, like what are the ways that we can connect with this, because I think that part of the like intuitive or like the achieving brain versus like the being or spiritual brain is our culture
Right.
is very rational dominant, and we're taught from a
Yeah.
young age to like seek security outside of ourselves, like get the stable job, get this, like control what you can and then you'll be safe. And a lot of that is outside of us doing what we can to control what we can. And there's wisdom in that, there's a time and a place for that. But most people who've been alive for the last like 5 years or more have been like that keeps continually getting shaken up to see like actually there's a lot of stuff we really can't control and didn't see coming.
Yeah.
So what is this connection that can help we can return to within us to help guide us through that? Because if we're just holding on to a false sense of security or control, it's a lot harder psychologically when we're suddenly like the world's in chaos or like we're let go from our safe job and now we don't know what's happening next. And then we can
Hmm.
just spiral into anxiety, like trying to do all these things where there's still time to do and plan, but then having a walk, being able to just be, being able to have intuitive information help come in, like it can be like breadcrumbs on the path that can help guide us. And that security can come to return within us again, or like this connection of a loving, caring universe within us.
That's a really good analogy. So I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Grateful Podcast. I'm interrupting to let you know that it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode with someone that you think would enjoy it, or leave a review down below so I can learn what I can do better and what I'm doing well with this podcast. It's a passion project and I really want it to turn into something that helps people everywhere. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So, to provide a little personal anecdote for this, right now well, so this is Northeastern, probably the school I'll go to next year, but I'm not 100% decided yet. I'm on a big, it's a big decision for me. And on all the decisions I've made in my life, uh, I've never really been able to explain them logically, which is when I was doing your quiz on what uh, intuitive type I had, I mentioned that, and I think it's really interesting how I make decisions and can become so confident with them when they're not entirely based or mostly not based on statistics. It's this feeling I get inside of me. What do you recommend for people that are making decisions based on their intuition and making life, yeah, just they're going to make decisions that change the rest of their lives or influence the rest of their lives based on something they don't completely understand?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to give blanket advice because everybody's in such a unique place. I think we're all on our own path, and but based on what you said, if you can look back and say, I think it can be helpful to say, how have you made decisions in the past? How did you know the right decision? And you can kind of reflect, journal, look at what's in common with those, and confidently answer that and say, like, these turned out pretty well. Like, I don't regret these decisions. Then it's knowing like that's how you make decisions and that's part
Hmm.
of it for you. And so I think that can help give validation and weight to say, like, even if other people don't get this, this has served me well. And it can also help people to know of like when these things line up, like I'll know when I arrive at the knowing that this was the right decision for me. For someone with a more complex history of trauma or hard time trusting or knowing what that is, like they may not know. Like they might say, I thought this was intuition and it didn't turn out well. It's like there may need to be more healing work or trauma processing work or like safety, stability, trust work developed first before they can get to that stage of fully trusting it, or making decisions based off that.
Are there warning signs that emerge of this is false intuition?
Um, I think sometimes there's more of like this wasn't actually fully intuition. There can be like there's an intuitive piece and then our mind makes something out of that. I would find that really early on because our brain is really good at filling in details and stories to make it sound logical. Um,
Yes.
it might be a piece of like, oh, I really feel drawn to go take this course or like read this book. And my mind would jump to like, I'm gonna get certified in this and I'm gonna do it professionally. It was more like, no, there's like learning here and just the first one's fine and then you're gonna actually be it done. So like don't sign up for the whole thing. It's like
Yeah.
this is again, like it's one little thing at a time. Don't get ahead of yourself. But rational mind wants to be like, oh, I want to know where this is going and like why. Or you might meet someone who ends up being a really good friend or like a partner or something where it's like this wasn't even about the thing you're going to, it was about the connection here. Like I do think intuitive ability is our ability to tap into this like quantum field and like some ability to have receptors for that of this
Yeah.
larger, because if we're part of this one field of unified energy and we're an individual expression of that, maybe it makes sense that we have some sensory perception that can clue us into the nature of that reality.
So you've talked a lot about, I think that's your third time you've mentioned quantum physics and in relation with intuition. Could you describe that relationship for me?
Yeah, because I mean, like Western individualist mind is often like we're this individual being cut off from everything else. Like it's a cold, dead world and we're on our
Yeah.
own. Like survival of the
That,
fittest. Intuitive, and many more like ancient traditions and cultures, and what we're seeing from quantum physics is like the actual nature of reality when we really break it down from what science can tell so far. It's like they can't clearly separate, like where is the separation of like everything just seems to be energy and it's one unified field of energy. We
wow.
experience it as separate in our time space brain nervous system reality, but it's actually not.
It's a scientific representation of oneness, of Buddhist oneness. And my favorite metaphor for it is we're all a part of the ocean, we're just different waves. Uh, and so I wasn't aware that there's actual, that quantum physics backs that up scientifically. That's really, really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And then when people have like spiritual awakening experiences, they often have an experience of feeling that, knowing that, getting a real taste or like sensory experience of it. It's the difference between the rational mind exercise of like, is there a higher power? Is this like here's the pros and cons of reasoning for it versus like, oh, I've experienced something that's like changed the way
Yeah.
what I know.
Spiritual awakening is another one of those things that I think could uh, disillusion some people. Could you go over like what that is on a more, uh, I mean, I believe in it, but on a less, I guess, woo-woo level?
Yeah, I think it is those experiences of like we're not just this cut off separate thing on our own.
Yeah.
It's this experience of that sense of collective consciousness or one unified field in some way or another. There's different degrees of that people have, but there's a Gallup poll research out of the US that asked, one of the questions was, have you ever had a profound spiritual or religious experience that changed the course of your life? And it was rated 1 to 5, with 5 being like the strongest it could be. Based on how like the skepticism, the woo woo nature of spirituality, like my guess would have been that would have been pretty low for people. It was 41% rated at 5 out of 5.
Really?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
It is
Wow.
fascinating. Like the research actually shows that spiritual experiences are actually so much more common than we think. But I think it is one of the limitations of like the Western diagnostic model of psychology that's really taken it to be like, there's not many places to put it in the DSM. Like if it's like, I heard voices, my grandma visited me, I had this oneness with trees, and like it's a lot, the universe is alive and God is speaking to me. It's like, okay, like where do we put this? Like people don't want to talk about it with other people. They're so many people actually have had even moments of these experiences. It might be like a dream or a knowing when a loved one passes away, that it's just
Hmm.
like a one-off experience and then life goes back to normal, and they're like, I'll never forget that. And so many of us actually have these experiences. We're just not talking about them with other people because there's this fear of being, again, like too woo woo. Is this crazy? Are people going to judge me or stigmatize me for it?
Yeah.
But it's common.
That's so interesting. So with that, how do you envision the future of uh, like mental health practice and spirituality? Do you envision them converging?
I think it's already happening. Like in my experience, it's already happening. There's more and more as we know more about even just like somatic work, unconscious, inner child stuff. We're working. There's more and more movement out of just like just treating people like we're just logical thoughts, just conscious mind. And I do like I think because I was very intuitively guided to open up my practice habit. I knew it had to be based. I had some pretty profound spiritual experiences that I like knew it had to be based on spirituality. Like that couldn't be hidden or in the closet, and that's why I went into private practice to market it that way. Like
Mm.
I actually had a bubble like come up and float and then like travel down different hallways. Took like five
What?
different turns at the same level, and then it popped in like my meditation spiritual room, and like full goosebumps when I was really struggling with the question of like, do I just go regular psychology or not?
Wow.
And I was like,
Wait,
okay,
it
I'm
was
not going to get a more clear sign that like I won't get a more clear answer than that. But it was years to figure out how to do it together still.
so was that do experiences like that happen as you become more in touch with your intuition?
I haven't had it come. I haven't had something like that, like obvious in the physical world since then. I
Yeah.
feel like as I've gotten more in touch with it in those subtle ways, it doesn't need to be as loud. But I have a lot of clients where they're like, they might have like 3 car accidents in a row. It's not saying they deserve that or do stuff, but they'll just feel like after they're in their healing process, they're going through, they're like, I feel like something was just trying to wake me up and like get things to change. Like get me to do things differently, get me to deal with this stuff I haven't dealt with, get me to live my life in a different way, get me to leave that job or like toxic relationship. Like so I do feel like sometimes like the universe might turn up the volume to be like, are you listening yet? Like it's not to punish.
So when you say that something is trying to change, it's the universe, the something behind it.
Well, the universe are like our soul. It's almost like the part of us
Okay.
that existed before we came into this physical body and the part of us that'll exist after we're gone.
Yeah, as a very spiritually curious person, I don't believe, I'd consider myself agnostic. I don't believe in God. I'm not subscribed to any religions. The closest thing would be Buddhism, but I actually am talking to a Buddhist teacher tomorrow, and I'm going to ask the question of like, can I consider myself Buddhist because I'm in Western culture? But yeah, I'm very curious about these things. But I find myself uh, mostly believing that the whatever people refer to as God is just the universe as a whole. But it's very difficult for me to describe that. It's one of those ideas that
Yeah.
very, very hard to put words to. But it seems
I have
like
a
you
friend who calls
agree.
it Gus, like God, universe, spirit, like whatever you want to refer to it as, it's
I
Gus.
like that.
It's just this. But it's when you've had this spiritual experience, it's an experience. It's like it's a personal relationship.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's almost confirming that that idea of oneness that we've talked about.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we talked about oneness and that that overlap between modern science and ancient wisdom. Are there any more overlaps, or are there any discrepancies that are big between the two?
I mean, I'm not an expert on every religious tradition for sure, the ancient part
Yeah,
of
that
it.
would
I
be
do like a
crazy.
lot of what I talk about more is almost more like the Western, like bite-sized social media spirit, like the spiritual,
Yeah.
like the whitewash spirituality that I see a lot, which I talk about a lot more in the book because it shows up in my office a lot more. And I had my troubles kind of being like, well, okay, when I'm looking to navigate this world, and I see that with clients too, of how do you find like credible, safe people to kind of work with? How do you follow your own intuition? I think for me, it's more around being like, this is real. There is credibility to it, and there is value in the mental health system too, as well as the spiritual side. But each person's journey is really unique because sometimes like there's a dangerous psychology that it can all get pathologized or be like there's nothing there, that's not real, it's not a valid experience, where it can be very much a part of someone's world. They can be like there can be very high intuitive sensitivities going on that are contributing to mental health, or they're part of the picture there. Other times too, it could be some spiritual communities might label something of like, oh, it's just a spiritual awakening, it's fine. And it's like, actually, this could be a mental health breakdown that also has spiritual symptoms to it, but it's not just fine. And like meditating more, trying to open up those like upper chakras is really destabilizing if someone's actually having a mental health crisis, or this is getting into psychotic based illness, or they're really losing touch with like 3D, the ability to function in the 3D world. Like things may need to be stabilized more first. That's not my area of specialization, but again, it's just something I've seen too many. And I basically like wrote my book around spiritual awakening because most of the people speaking publicly about spiritual awakening, intuition, if you Google it, it is a wild west of answers. Like there are professionals about it, there are research. I'm not saying professionals are the only way, but it's hard for the general public to sort out like who speaking here has like a legitimate system of training, whether that's in their own cultural lineage, where there is like, or versus like this is some person who got this sudden intuitive message. They did an ayahuasca ceremony in someone's basement, and now they think they're qualified to take people through these like pretty intense transformational processes that they probably have no business touching.
Right.
So I've seen people get into like dangerous to like really bad territory with not knowing like what to look for or how to screen people.
And so I'm guessing that's why you wrote your book, Fuck Toxic Spiritual, or yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me, what is toxic spirituality?
Again, it's a spectrum of things, so I touch on different pieces where some I think sometimes like this like Western capitalist pieces has taken ancient traditions and like really capitalized it, and ego, like infused a
Yeah.
lot of ego with it, where most of us has gone to some kind of manifestation vision board workshop where it's like, think of the check, think of the money, like visualize it. Woo. It's like this isn't what this is about. Like our soul is not here to like just accumulate billions of dollars. Like maybe some
Western
people that's
world.
part of their soul lesson, but I've gone to and asked messages of like, oh, like how do I have more financial security here? How do I do this? And like I've gotten messages back where it's like, be grateful for what you have. You have more than, and I was like, okay, thank you, like humbled, but like that was intuitive, like spiritual guidance. It was like, no, we're not helping you with that. Like,
Yeah.
like it'll check you also. it is more about like how do we develop these qualities in ourselves? Like what's our own soul purpose for being here? And that's not to just accumulate crap in the material world. It's not saying that's not an important piece of it. There is like hierarchy of needs. Like basic needs are really important, but beyond that, it doesn't give us what we think it's going to give us. And like the neuroscience shows us that as well. Like achievement oriented brains are more vulnerable to depression, lack of meaning, anxiety. Whereas when we can have more flow, meaning, spiritual connection, it's like that gives us the feeling we're actually looking for. And so it isn't about buying things or accumulating more stuff. It's about purpose, meaning, connection with others, like spiritual connection. So those are some of the things. And like within that, there's a whole host of issues where people might just be like, oh, like don't feel any bad feelings because you're going to manifest something bad. Or like, well, your soul must have signed up for this. So like just be happy about it. And we're still in a human body. We still have human emotions. We have a human nervous system. Like it's not less spiritual to work with that. And I mean, I've seen some people be very shamed or stigmatized, even just for considering like medication or hormone replacement therapy, or like they're going through cancer and their community is just like, oh, manifest this or books. And it's just, it can get really toxic, and
Yeah.
really gaslighting, and it can really leave people alone and isolated or even like rejected or shunned by their like spiritual, so-called spiritual support community. And I don't think we're doing a good job if it's like that toxic positive that we can't actually show up for people in real suffering. And part of spirituality is like we die. We get sick and we die. Like it is not always up to us. We are all going to at some point. Sometimes the lesson there, it's not, I believe that there is that power of some people, like it may be part of their path that that's the option to heal, but it's not going to be the option forever. And like there's a soul piece. I've got that messages for animals, for people in my own life of like this is coming. Like it is the soul's time. And so I think it's like how do we do these hard parts of being human better? Because spirituality should help us do that better and be more grounded in it, but still take care of it and take care of each other. So there's the kind of well-meaning pieces all the way to these are like if we're working with other people or people running communities, like are they doing their shadow work? Are they a safe place to go? Maybe they just don't know enough and haven't done enough of their own work that they're not intentionally doing harm, but they are. And then there's a small percentage, spiritual or not, we should probably all be taught about there's some people who are really emotionally immature, not accountable, not able to regulate their emotions, either just that's where they're at right now, or they may even have some like personality disorder traits or characteristics, and they can be actually very dangerous. Like getting close to someone like this has a very high degree of trauma to the people like closest to them. And that exists in spiritual communities too. So it's like I've seen some people go through some real like manipulation. They go to someone vulnerable thinking like, oh, this is a spiritual place. This person has all these abilities. And so they must be more evolved or they must be here for the right reasons. And that is not always true.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I want to go back to what you said about achievers and the achiever mindset. Um, I think that will resonate a lot with my audience. It definitely resonates with me. A lot of the people listening or watching are people that are very wired to achieve and are young. But the thing that I like, the main message of this podcast is to optimize for fulfillment over material success by being grateful for right now. Um, and there's this want from so many people to constantly improve with no end in sight. And from my understanding, that is the mindset of a lot of your clients. They come to you stuck in this self-improvement, self-development process. What leads a lot of them to get stuck, and what steps are necessary to get unstuck?
Yeah, I do think again, I think it is also heavily influenced by like Western capitalistic culture as well as like we are trained from a really young age. We ask kids in like kindergarten, what do you want to be when you grow up? But like
Yeah,
you should have this figured out. Or like when you're graduate, what are you gonna do after graduation? Like I didn't really know for sure. And I think there's this piece of it's not about we can get into this black and white mentality of like you either just coast and do nothing and are like living in a van by the river kind of thing with no no goals or hopes, or like toxic productivity. But I think there's a time and space for kind of both, of like goals, ambition, be working towards something, be expanding, be improving. But how do we actually more be at peace in the moment? Because I think the cultural message is almost like, when you get here, it's like then you can relax, then you can enjoy life, and then you can be safe and like feel some level of security and actually relax and enjoy where you're at. But many of us get to this point where, for me, it's like I hit so many of those milestones and just was like, okay, recover from burnout and like next one, that
Yeah.
it's like, wait, this actually isn't working to bring the feeling that I thought it would. Or like I didn't feel like I could actually stop there because there's something else next. And so I've had to work with this myself. I have to continually kind of bring myself back there. It's gotten a lot better. But a metaphor I like to use, if it resonates for people, is like thinking our life is like a long-term kind of like road trip or like travel trip. It's like there's places we want to go, there's things we want to do. I don't want to like just wait to die and be watching TV and just be like, well, I've done all the things, like whenever it's my time. I kind of have to make peace with like I want to die with unfinished things on my to-do list, because then I'm still expanding and growing and making the most out of this time.
Hmm.
But I also want to enjoy the time while I'm here. Like I don't want to be so, you could go on a cross country road trip and you could be really intense about the schedule and be like, we have one bathroom break, snacks in the car, no stopping. Like we will drive all night. We'll have one hotel break in 5 days. And it's like, oh yeah, we're going to do a lot of stuff, but this sounds really terrible. Like I don't want to go on that trip. And we can get caught in living life like that, where it's like each day is like, hey, I have to do this, and now I have to work on my side hustle, and now I have to go to school, and it's like, but you're not enjoying any of it. Like it actually sucks day to day. And people can get into places where they're not like actively suicidal, but they're like, if I just got hit by a bus and was in a coma for a while, or like faked my own death and lived on an island, it's like these escape fantasies where, yeah, because if we're only living for the future, like the present sucks and the future is not guaranteed. And also, if we're just wiring our nervous system like that, it's like we reach the thing and then we're not satisfied with it. Like, and I've worked with people where, and I've known people in my personal life where they're like, if I just hit this, and we're talking like millions of dollars in their business, they hit it and they're like, now I need 10 million, like
Hmm.
instantly later. It's like, it's a hole that's never filled with achieving. And so I think that the neuroscience piece of that is knowing like, yes, they can give us dopamine hits, they can help with our identity, there can be value to pursuing those things, but they won't fill up that like meaning hole that's not filled with having things. That's a quick, like it's almost like a drug. It's a quick thing, but then you quickly need something else. So those things of like, how do we be present with the people we love? How do we have time just to be creative, to not monetize it, to have
Yeah.
relaxation time, presence with friends and family, to just be being and learning, because it's actually really uncomfortable to do that at first. It's hard. Um,
Hmm.
it can take work to learn how to relax and learn to just be without having to like earn the rest or deserve it. But it's like that's where we connect with more meaning and are more satisfied with like what we have, as we're still taking like sustainable steps to still grow.
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the problems is some people will listen to that really struggle with motivation, and they'll be like, "Oh, boo-hoo, what a problem to have. You can't figure out how to rest, and you can't figure out how to take your foot off the gas. You're successful, all these things that I want." And it's almost seen, this problem of not being able to take rest for yourself is almost seen as a higher class problem, a problem
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't need as much attention. And that's one of the reasons that so many people are struggling from it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I mean, what you described, where like you're kind of going after your goals, but also like you have to be present right now and trying to find that balance. I've called it the duality of gratitude and ambition, where you're
Yeah.
grateful for what you have right now, but you're also trying to build a life that will enhance your life. But the big thing is you can't be, your happiness, your joy cannot be dependent. It can't be contingent upon achieving your goals. You have to be okay right now if what you're pursuing doesn't work. And that's one of the hardest things to realize, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it is about it's like an energy conservation piece too, where you're saying like, here's the goals, and we have to get kind of ruthless about like, okay, maybe volunteering would be cool and this might help boost my resume, but like, what's that going to do to my overall energy every day? It's
Hmm.
like, how much is that going to move the needle towards what I want, or am I already doing enough here? And like keeping this time to connect with friends for interest, to like to actually enjoy the process of getting there, it's better served for me to protect that time and energy.
Yeah. In your life, I mean, you've built a lot of really cool things, but have you, as you've grown older, figured out how to balance your fulfillment with your material success?
I don't think like I don't think there's an ever fully figured it out. Like I'm cautious of anyone who's like, I have mastered everything and I am not learning anything anymore, working with anyone, because I'd be like, that's a red flag for someone. I wouldn't. Yeah, I've definitely
Yeah.
gotten better at it. Like I've done a lot of work because I'm kind of like recovering overfunctioner. I don't know if you know like overfunctioning and underfunctioning in times of stress. Like it's kind
No.
of a default stress response where you can either be an overfunctioner or underfunctioners. Underfunctioners tend to freeze and like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started. Like somebody save
Mm.
me. And definitely overfunctioning is like, okay, like I'm gonna like college applications are coming up. I gotta apply it everywhere. I gotta like start working on this years ago. They already were working on it. They're already building their resume. Like they're doing too many things.
Yeah, that's
Um,
me.
yeah. And so again, like our culture, over functioning is, it has more benefits than under functioning. It's not something we choose, but again, there's still a real shadow side to it and a struggle to it. Sometimes for myself and a lot of the people I work with, it's like sometimes the psychological or like physical health wheels start falling off like decades later, because if we're relatively healthy, we can override our body for some time, but not forever. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's like people may have young children or they get older, like they can have major mental health like kind of breakdown issues or physical health breakdown where the body is just like, no, you don't get to, like, we're not powering through this anymore. Like you are forced to slow down and deal with this now. So yeah, they both have their like pros and cons with them.
100%. With your clients, how do you help them like make progress towards that, towards becoming more fulfilled?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's many different areas we could go with this. A lot of times again, it's not just about like what are the things for achievement, but what are the things that are like what are your top core values at this stage of life? Like what is most
Okay.
important? Because if we say it's like, oh, it's actually my relationship, my family, time for friends, service, and then we look at like where are your hours actually going every week, like oftentimes that doesn't match up. And sometimes there is a piece of, it may not be even like changing exactly what we're doing, but if we can say like, oh, actually, like I do need to, like going to work allows me to provide for my family's stability and future, and like this is part of, like I can't just quit my job
Hmm.
because then my kids, I can't feed my kids and have a place to live. Like if we can kind of take back some of that meaning and shift our energy for how we're going in, whether while we're working towards longer term goals, then we can kind of feel more in control and have more gratitude for it.
Yeah, I saw on your website you said that a lot of your clients are aware of where they feel stuck, but that awareness uh, isn't actually the tool they need to fix it. How do you navigate that, and how do you switch from thinking I need to be aware of the problem to actually solving the problem?
Yeah. Well, I think I definitely want to validate that awareness of patterns and problem is a really essential first step. And that can often take a lot of work for people to even get to that level because there does
Yeah.
require like introspection, reflection. Um, I often work with a lot of people who've done some level of personal growth, or they've often even been in therapy before. And they're just kind of, they're like, I had some stuff that was kind of helpful, but I didn't feel like I got to the root of it. I feel like
Okay.
there's something deeper. Um, and so usually when people are at that level where they're like, I know there's a deeper pattern here, I help them work with more what's the nervous system wiring? Like, let's get out of the conscious mind story and be like, what's the energy happening kind of in your body? Like, what's the subconscious, unconscious drivers of this? Because often that is rooted in early experiences old emotional memory. Like it's often not even in our conscious mind. It could be like a 5-year-old version of us who like this was adaptive to, who didn't understand and is like, I'm trying to keep everybody happy and like this is how I helped manage the tone of the household. And our adult self is like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to like overfunction for people or feel guilty, and then we'll just like automatically get sucked back into it and we're like, ah, I did it again. Or like we have these big emotional responses and our rational mind doesn't want to feel that way,
Yeah.
but it's, we're still like going through these energy cycles and waves, so we need ways to like actually process that through our nervous system so it's not kind of hijacking the present day reality.
Yeah. I feel that because oftentimes I'll be aware of the things I need to do, and I'll be like, oh yeah, if I want to feel more at peace, I should take more time in the morning to read or meditate. And then I wake up and I go straight to work or to school or whatever. And it's like, well, you told yourself exactly what you know works, but you didn't do that. And that's a really
And
hard
most
balance
things
to
are
have.
like that because the conscious mind runs like 5 to 10% of a show on a good day. So usually
Yeah.
for those deeper patterns, it's not conscious. It's it, and then it is helping people to be bring more awareness and like curious, non-judgmental compassion to see like what is this energy? Like what is this part? Like what is this part of like what is this energy that wants to get out of bed right away and is like do not slow down. And I have processes I'll take clients through to help. And I always use intuitive ability and clinical experience in session because I'm not just listening to people, I'm like full intuitive listening and sensing as well. So sometimes it's like this might be an earlier like childhood wiring. Other times it's like this goes back generations. Like it's relatively new in
Yeah.
terms of generational history. When we go back to our grandparents and great grandparents, most of them were not like, I'm going to do my self care this morning and journal before I get out to the farm. You're like, no, you are working and like homesteading and like surviving or dying. And so this can be really ingrained in our energy and in our epigenetic like DNA. And we again, Western psychology, if it's just this individual conscious mind, treats it, doesn't always recognize this larger context that we live in.
That's so interesting. So, um, last question. I always like to end with this one because it is called the Grateful Podcast, even though we didn't talk too much about gratitude today. I just want to end by asking, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful to be here and be having these discussions and more people like opening up. I'm grateful for intuition for sure. It's been such
Yes,
a it's something I'm grateful for every time. It's been so helpful. And it gets more and more helpful as the world gets crazier and crazier or feels crazier and crazier.
100%. Yeah, I get that. Well, I'm so grateful that you agreed to come on the show and that we had this conversation. This was definitely my most scientific conversation I've had yet, which is awesome because I'm actually going to go to school to study behavioral neuroscience. So I'm like so into that stuff. That's why I kept asking you those questions. Um, yeah, so I look forward to maybe doing this in 4 years when I have a degree in that stuff and we'll be able to be on a more level playing field.
That's so exciting. Congratulations. It's very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take good care.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Grateful Podcast featuring the amazing Katie Turner. This intersection between philosophy and psychology is so fascinating to me, and I'm so grateful I got to have this conversation. I hope that all of you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. And if you want to keep tuning into these amazing conversations, then make sure to hit subscribe wherever you're consuming this content. Also, I would love a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That just helps me know what I'm doing well, know what I need to work on, and it also makes the podcast look better for people that are just discovering it. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great week. Stay grateful.